He's the former president and publisher of the Sun Herald, and now he's on the radio. Welcome to Coast View with Ricky Mathews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome to Coast View, the show that celebrates the men and women who are making coastal Mississippi a better place to live, work, and play. Have a really interesting show today. I've got my friend Dave Dennis from Specialty Contractors. I'll tell you a little bit more about him in just a second. We're going to have the first two segments and just talk about current events and what's going on. He's been in touch with the Federal Reserve. We'll sort of understand what's happening from the regional perspective as it relates to that, but just have an interesting conversation. And then in the second segment, we've got Cynthia Sutton, who's the executive director of the Ocean Springs Chamber of Commerce and Main Street Tourism Bureau there in Ocean Springs. So look forward to having a conversation with Cynthia. I have found over and over again that the chamber executives on the ground have a really good sense of what's going on in their communities and sort of the voice of small business. So anyway, Dave, good morning. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, Ricky. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. It's great, good to have you. I went back and looked when we had an extended Coast View session together. We'll actually put a link to that on this video so people who, if they didn't see it, can go back and take a look at it and take a deep dive into your life, where you came from, and kind of more about specialty contractors and all of that. But you did build a really good business that has stood the test of time. Tell people what Specialty Contractors is.
We're a commercial interior company. We do a lot of build outs, a lot of commercial properties. You rarely see a commercial job that's a wood stud. We do a lot of steel, metal, interior, acoustical, computer rooms, just a lot of tremendous amount of build outs, either on malls or office buildings and hospitals, institutions. But for instance, many of the casinos here, once the steel and the concrete was up, many times we would do the exterior wall systems and then all the interior build out. So those are things we do and have done it, thank goodness, reasonably well for a few years, to the tune of about 11,000 commercial and industrial jobs over time. So not bad for 40 years.
Wow, that's incredible.
We're plugging along, and even in this environment, we've had a few jobs, 2 or 3 that have pulled back and been canceled. A couple at Stennis Space Center with Lockheed Martin and some others. But generally speaking, most construction has continued on to a certain degree, even though it's perhaps gauged in terms of your masks and other concerns you do just in the course of adding a few layers of safety to it. So
yeah, I get it. And I
plug it along.
During the conversation, I want to get your read on what you're seeing. You've got jobs happening all across the region, and you got your 2 kids. Your 2 extraordinarily well-educated kids involved in the business now. How are they doing?
Thank goodness.
How are they doing?
Doing well. I mean, they're doing well. Patrick and Mary are expecting a child, so they're being certainly much more cautious about getting out in public. So we're doing well. No complaints.
So, Dave, I want to talk about a wide variety of things, but one of the things you and I were talking about offline is on social media, there's so much misinformation. It's just and disinformation where people are literally being guided so that there's division in America. I actually talked about it yesterday. Matthew McConaughey has actually started a public service announcement effort to say this is about us. It's not about politics. Why are we enabling politics to divide us?
Yeah.
If you wear a mask, you believe in one thing, and if you don't wear a mask, you believe in another thing. It's just sad. I posted something yesterday. Let me pull it up on Facebook. But I posted something yesterday that simply talked about the mask. And after I posted this, someone who I let in, I let very few people into my personal world on Facebook. But since I started this show, started letting a few more people in. I say a few more people. It grew from probably 1,000 friends to nearly 3,000 friends now. So I've got people in my universe now, Facebook universe, that I don't know. And to be honest with you, I've let a few wackos in. So they've been eradicated, but unfortunately I let them in. But here's what I posted. I do not understand all of the anger surrounding wearing a mask. The infectious disease experts recommend masks as a way of slowing the spread of coronavirus. If they are wrong, the only consequence is that you wore a mask for no reason. If they are right, you may save the life of someone shopping in the same grocery store. It seems like an easy decision to me. I mean, that's just kind of a basic thing.
Yeah.
It's so interesting though to read. People would come on and say, "Well, I'm not wearing one." A mask is for sick people. It's just how can there be any confusion? The one thing that Matthew McConaughey is saying that let's don't fight two wars, a political war and a war against the virus. Let's fight one. Let's all stay unified like we were in the very beginning, and stay focused on defeating the virus. I think some people misread things that since we're beginning to turn the volume back on the economy, they misread that as the light switch is back on, we can go live our lives like normal. But it's just not like that, is it, Dave?
I don't see it that way. I don't see it as the light switch totally back on in terms of being able to do things as you're suggesting. But you've got to take into account just as you suggested, what are you doing to expose other people? And if that's a concern, then you need to, how you protect yourself is one thing, but what you do to expose others, that's a public issue, and you need to be respectful of it. There are a lot of ways that you can go bipartisan, and I have read McConaughey's comments a time or two, and let's hope that people will take it and run with it. But if they can, it's a good answer to come to a middle common ground and move forward. Otherwise, we're going to be diametrically opposed on solutions. And in this situation, that's just not the answer. I mean, we're in a battle for an economy to keep it alive. We're in a battle to keep jobs and keep people healthy, because currently the way it's standing, there are a lot of people that need treatments, whether it's chemo treatments, other treatments. There are a lot of prenatal and neonatal concerns that are perhaps either not getting addressed or they're not being in a timely manner addressed, shots, booster shots, those things. So you need to be very, very respectful of what you're doing, because there is an impact on so many people that you may not even take into account. So
I think
I'm going to agree.
Yeah, what's interesting is the mayors across the coast are getting together twice a week, and they're doing a really good job of fighting this common enemy together.
Yeah.
And I would say, looking at FOFO in particular, with help from Vincent Creel, they're doing a good job of communicating daily through Biloxi TV and other ways through social media to sort of talk about the latest. But FOFO was on yesterday, talking about his concern about there's been an uptick in Harrison County, and last couple of days, and if that were to continue, that could be a real problem for us. And he keeps talking about the 1%, and he thanks the 99% of the people who are following the rules and wearing the mask in public and doing social distancing, but he's deeply concerned about the 1%. The 1% may be more like 5% or 10%. I don't know what the number is, but his point is that small minority of people could change the course of history for coastal Mississippi. If we do end up getting a bigger outbreak, what happens if we get an outbreak? It triggers falling back a phase, and we could be locked down again. And at the time when
you're going to back up, you remember going back a number of years ago when you'd get on an airplane and when smoking was prohibited, the plane didn't have its wheels up yet when they said okay to smoke, and the 3 or 4 rows in the back, when they lit up, it didn't matter where you were on that plane. In a matter of a minute, you were just inundated with the smoke, and whether you could handle it or not is another story, but there's no escaping it. So if you have an issue, you need to be respectful of it and stay the heck out of the public view.
Yeah. Well, what I like though is that from Milton Segura to Craig Ray at Visit Mississippi to a long list of others in the casino industry and restaurant industry. Had Rob Stinson on recently and Robert St. John. There's a tremendous amount of alignment that we have a competitive advantage, because before all of this happened, 80% of the visitors to Mississippi came here by car. Correct. So as people are still leery about flying, they're going to drive here. We got a large beach, from Jackson to Hancock County. People can space out. We've got restaurants who get it. The casinos are certainly going to open up, and they don't want to be a contributor toward anything other than sending the message this is a safe place to visit. We're really aligned around that, and I wish the average person in coastal Mississippi would get on board with this, and so we could have a unified point of view about this. I was in a marine store this past weekend, over 20 people in the store. I was the only one with a face mask on. It's
Well, I've thought about it this way too, Rick. I chaired the Oyster Council for a few states. I guess I still do. I don't know. But if you had one series of oysters, one sack of oysters that had Vibrio or cholera, only took one, that's all it would take, then the word is, they're bad oysters down here. Well, if you get one contaminated casino, it's going to be the same thing. If you get one contaminated mall, it doesn't have to be a casino. I was just using that as an example, but any public space that becomes contaminated, that's going to be the storyline. That's going to be the press line. That no matter how you shake it out, the storyline in Nashville or anywhere you read it's going to be virus in so and so facilities, and it's going to chance to spell on every one of them.
Yeah, and we'll come back to this after the break, but there's a politicization that occurs as a result of it as well. So, we'll talk about that on the other side. This is Dave Dennis from Specialty Contractor, a former gubernatorial candidate, been involved in the Federal Reserve. He's a smart guy and just having a terrific conversation this morning. We'll see you after this break.
Listen live or on demand and watch episodes of Coast Vue on your laptop, desktop, or on your phone or tablet by going to supertalkmsgulfcoast.com.
Talking to the people that help make the coast such a unique place to live. This is Coast View with Ricky Mathews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. We've got Dave Dennis with me. He's the president and owner of Specialty Contractors. Does work all across the region. He's been involved in the Federal Reserve. He's a former gubernatorial candidate. So he's just a smart guy. We're just having a conversation about the current situation. Hey, before we went to the break, what we're talking about was not the weight of an outbreak, wherever it occurs. Could be employees at this company or that company, but it's like your analogy of the bad sack of oysters. If you might have 1,000 oyster sacks that are perfect, that are beautiful, that are salty and ready to be eaten, and you got one bad sack, suddenly all 1,000 sacks have some kind of stigma related to them. We've got to send the message to the world that coastal Mississippi is a safe place to visit. That is so important, isn't it, Dave?
Yeah, it's mandatory. If you look at the statistics, even on the extended care, long-term care homes, such as nursing homes, memory care units, things of that general nature, Ricky, there's been, at least on the last stat I read yesterday, there's been one reported case in a long-term care in Harrison County here, and it resulted in a fatality. But that is mandatory, because you get in a place like that, obviously the spread is rampant. It's incredible. Well, the same thing's going to be true from a PR point of view, from a psychological point of view, and candidly from a marketing point of view. It would take millions of dollars of marketing money to revamp one or two incidents of, we've got a virus in here, or so and so has been discovered there, and it is mandatory that that the serious testing goes on, at least while this is a hot button issue and a very active, contagious perspective we've all got to deal with. So, yes, it is one of the major issues that we just candidly we gotta nail it. There's really no room for error, no margin of error here.
And we could talk the next 3 hours about this point, and that is that for some reason people who want to reopen the economy are somehow Republican and supportive of the president, and people who want to sort of keep things locked down are wanting to save people and think that reopening the economy is going to kill people, and that they tend to be more liberal. I'm just describing the extremes.
Yeah.
But it's sad that we're in that spot.
Well,
because
you almost want to call some on both sides knuckleheads, because candidly, I made this comment on actually on a television program 2 months ago in early mid-March that we have to thread a needle here, because if you come too early on reopening, candidly, the medical community and the epidemiologists and others they're going to flip out and obviously suggest that we're putting profit ahead of everything else. If you wait too late, you're going to have a very difficult time getting an economy cranked back up, because there've already been, even 2 months, incredible changes in the economy, unbelievable changes.
So what are your friends at the Fed telling you?
Well, I chaired a 4 or 5 state area for a few years, I think 3 different times, but that was a $200 a month gig too, by the way, so that was nice. But I did have a long visit. I had about a 45-minute visit with someone I had mentioned to you earlier yesterday. It was a very, very lengthy conversation, and it dealt with where do they see the GDP, where do they see the economy, where do they see money supply, and a couple of very interesting points. If you go back to 09 and 10, say 2000, the meltdown of late 2008 through 2010 or 11, the problem, generally speaking, was banks and financial institutions, not exclusively, but it was housing. There were a lot of other components that went into it. But no matter how you sliced it, whether it was the Community Reinvestment Act that caused banks to falter, you pick 100 different reasons, and some of them were candidly not the bank's fault. They were regulatory concerns they had to abide by, making caustic loans, if you will, that mandated to do it. So that came into play 10 years ago in terms of it was a banking issue to a certain degree. At this point in time, the banks came into this very healthy, good balance sheets, strong liquidity, good reserve ratios.
Good reserve, right.
Very good reserve ratios, meaning they have loan capacity and other things. And typically, Federal Reserve would require a bank to have about a 10% on-hand reserve ratio in order to be able to leverage loans, so to speak. Sometimes you could go a little below that depending on your size and your stability. If you're a fledgling like de novo type startup bank, you'd probably a little higher, 12 or 13 maybe sometimes. But in some banks go significantly higher than that, just for a philosophy. But they were very, very healthy. And there are several other things, though. But the Federal Reserve, though, in terms of how are they looking at it? There were 2 or 3 points that were made yesterday, and it was a conversation with someone I've known for 20 years and in a extremely high level position with the Fed. The Fed has a very strong elastic balance sheet. They're very strong, and they have the ability to, in effect, just leverage whatever they need to do in terms of stretching that balance sheet to loan money to the Treasury. They're doing things now going into private sector, the Main Street program, which I don't think is actually in play yet, but coming. The Federal Reserve is actually doing some loans to municipalities and private sector, which is not done before. So there are a lot of tools that can do that, deal with the public with. That's one thing. Another one is they're going to do and use whatever tools are available to do whatever they have to do. And that is candidly pretty refreshing. And you have to wallpaper this market with money right now. Now, there are a lot of people that say that's nuts, and perhaps it is, but I would rather err on the side of having to pull inflation back than pull deflation up. So let's say your kids, you've got 3 kids, all of them reaching the prime of their life, Ricky, and buying houses. And let's say they buy a house, and I'll just arbitrarily pick a number for $200,000. And suddenly through deflation, that house is now worth 160, yet they got 180 loan on it. They're underwater. So that's what you cannot have. What you can deal with is if there's too much money in the market and you start having inflation creeping up, which is doubtful it's going to do that, then you can pull it back and tighten the credit markets down. So easier problem to manage, at least from my point of view, than deflation. So the Fed has that at their ability, that tool at their disposal, I should say, and they're continuing to do it in many ways that some visible, some not visible.
Well, that's so interesting. The fact that the Fed is going to play such an incredible role
Well,
in
they
this
are,
whole
Ricky.
recovery.
This is
Yeah.
still a consumer spending recovery. I don't care how you slice it. Congress putting money in people's hands, unprecedented. We're dealing out trillions like it's cotton candy at a Christmas party, and it's that's a scary thought. Candidly, it's a very scary thought. However, it's a manageable concern, and it's one that we'll deal with as time goes on. But it's still very, very manageable. But the ultimate resolve here is consumer spending, as it always is. And if you put money in consumers' hands, they're going to spend it, and hopefully with your multipliers. Your former employer, the Sun Herald, advertising has to be down incredibly, and they're hemorrhaging. A lot of businesses, I'm just using them as an example. They're a strong paper, and we've got to do everything we can to keep them rolling. But there are just so many businesses that are having to rethink. However, it has to be a consumer-driven, consumer market recovery, and I think that's what you're going to see.
And that's why it's so critical that we begin to turn the volume back up on the economy while doing it in a safe way, so people can have their jobs back. Because we don't have consumer spending if we don't have jobs.
Well, you don't, and you're not going to have money in your pocket. And again, there are going to be plenty of people that say no matter when you turn the dial up, they're going to say it's too soon, it's too early, and they may be right. But at the end of the day, you're going to lose more people, from my perspective, from non-treatments, from not getting truthfully, a lot of emotional and domestic concerns, because suicides are up. Every one of them. Suicides, abuse, holy smokes, all of them are shooting through the roof right now, and a lot of it has to do with the
stress.
That's a polite way to say it. Correct.
The stress of the situation.
Yeah.
It's we live in interesting times. We really do. I think one of the most, if we have to, we've got less than a minute left, but as we begin to close out this segment, the one message people need to hear is that, if you know people who are being resistant to social distancing and face masks in public and all of that, try to do your best to reach them, because there are going to be outbreaks along the coast. And as I said, the right kind of outbreak could really set us back. And it's still here. The numbers are ticking up some. I know that the governor, I know that FOFO and others are really concerned about it. And everybody's got to play their role as we open things back up. It doesn't mean green light to get back to your life as normal. It just doesn't. So anyway, Dave, I really appreciate you spending some time with me this morning. We'll get back together in a couple of weeks and just kind of continue the conversation.
Sounds like a plan, Ricky. Thank you, and y'all be safe.
This is super, man. This has been Dave Dennis from Specialty Contractors, and just an over-around smart guy. We'll see you after this.
You can also listen live to SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1 on your Amazon Alexa devices. Once you've enabled the skill, just say, "Alexa, open SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast."